Welcome to the fairest show on television, first tonight out of Essex Junction, Vermont. If you've never heard of it, it sounds like a lovely place, small hamlet outside of Burlington. It's time for sex ed in 5th grade there at Founders Memorial School. And the school has changed the typical birds and bees conversation. They will no longer learn in 5th grade as boys and girls, but they will rather be defined as a person who produces sperm and a person who produces eggs. The principal explains it like this: in an effort to align our curriculum with our equity policy, teachers will be using gender-inclusive language throughout this unit. With any differences, we strive to use person-first language as best practice. Essex Junction, Vermont is a beautiful place. Population 11,000. Not surprisingly, wealthy, very, very white, and very, very liberal. It is Vermont after all. It's actually sort of hard to imagine sex ed in 5th grade in a town of 11,000 is now a national story. We're leading our broadcast with it because what it says about American culture. But it's not really much different than a story from earlier this week. We told you about Manatee County, Florida, that wanted to put warnings on books in their libraries. Parents there worried young kids would find books about being gay in the library, and who knows what happened. They wanted parental consent forms in their library in Manatee County. Manatee County is Republican near Tampa. We had one of the county commissioners on to talk about their new policy. Has this been a problem, or is this just sort of a solution in search of a problem because there's this movement in America now when it comes to books and other kinds of content?
So I think that it is an issue.
Do your kids have iPhones and the internet and all that?
No.
If this is the problem you guys are dealing with in Manatee County, if the things in Manatee County must be pretty great.
Well, we're dealing with a whole lot of important issues in Manatee County.
To be fair, a lot of people are moving to Florida. Our esteemed booking team tried to get someone similar from Essex, Vermont, to talk about the push to add so-called gender-inclusive language that would turn girl to persons who make eggs and boy to persons who make sperm. But everybody involved in the story that we could reach out to today declined. Erika Sanzi is here, Director of Outreach for Parents Defending Education, a group that opposes the policy. Let me just ask you this. How is what Vermont is trying to do any different than what Manatee County, Florida is trying to do?
Well, first of all, in one case, we're talking about a unit for 5th graders, teaching them about puberty and human reproduction. And the other one is a situation that is much more broad about I don't even know the story there, but if I had to guess, it may be about age appropriateness of books. I don't know whether they were talking about required reading or libraries. So I do see these. I mean, I see what you mean in terms of like, are there big debates right now and disagreements happening among parents and public officials about what's appropriate for schools? Yes. But I don't think I would necessarily connect these two issues because that one seems much broader. And this one is very specific to 5th graders being taught a unit about human biology, human reproduction, and puberty, and essentially being told that they can't use certain words, but only for that unit.
Okay, fair point, and I do think about the fact that I've been doing television news a long time. I never thought I would be discussing people who produce sperm and people who produce eggs, and certainly not in a lead story. But the reason I connected them was that these are sort of about local control, right? If parents in Essex County, Essex Junction in Vermont don't like this, they can vote the school board out. The school board then gets new principals, and things change. That's how America works. And what I'm trying to figure out is, isn't there a danger from either side? Liberal groups attacking Manatee County, national liberal groups making these local issues national ones, and the same thing about Vermont. Why shouldn't Essex Junction be able to decide what Essex Junction wants to do?
Oh, they should be able to. At least I don't hear anybody saying that they shouldn't be able to, but I do think that often what happens is that a community, whether it's the parents or the taxpayers at large, they often have no idea what's going on in the schools that they're funding, and they certainly do deserve to know that 10 and 11-year-olds are being told that they're not allowed to use the words boy or girl or male or female in the context of a lesson around puberty and human reproduction.
I'm sure you're right that there are cases where parents don't know. Credit to Essex Junction, they sent a letter home. That's how we all know about it. We put the letter up on the screen. I don't know how parents could ask for anything more.
Well, one thing they could ask for is for the letter to be addressed to parents. You'll notice that it says families and caregivers. They deliberately avoided the word parents, but you're totally right. I mean, if there's one thing that we know, many parents are bumping into brick walls when they ask questions of schools. There's zero transparency. They can't get answers. So that is true. They went out of their way to make sure that the families of their students would know that they were going to shift towards a more dehumanizing language to use during this one context, even though if ever there were a time to be using the words male and female, I think it would be when you're teaching children about human reproduction.
Let me just ask you this, Erika.
But you're totally right. But you're right. If people think this is great and that's what they want their kids to learn, you're right. Like that, this is a local control issue.
That's America. Let me just ask you real quick, and I want to give you the last word here.
Sure.
How does this end? What's the end point? Does Florida and Vermont just essentially become the two extremes, and you live based on how you want your kids to learn, and there you go? That seems dangerous. I don't know.
I mean, I agree with you that that's not ideal, and I certainly hope that, things have swung so far in a strange direction lately as ideology has sort of not just crept into, but taken over in some places. My hope is that the pendulum begins to shift back, because most people and most parents, regardless of their politics, are pretty in the middle on a lot of this stuff. Yeah. So it's not that they don't want there to be inclusion or tolerance or kindness. It's not that they don't want, books to be in the library that are crucially important for education and also the freedom to learn. But there's a big difference between that and very sexually explicit graphic novels in schools with young children, and with trying to hijack language and tell children and staff that they can't use the words like boy and girl.
Yeah, and you make a great point that there's a very different situation in terms of what you say people can say versus what they have to say versus what they can't say and can't hear. Erika, I appreciate the conversation. As you point out, this isn't going away. We're going to have you back as it continues. Thank you very much.